Hey, what's up everybody? I figured I'd do another quick video here just to give you an update on what's going on with the whole rim situation and talk you through some of the options that I'm pursuing and why my plan has completely come apart in several ways. In all sorts of manner of implosion, this is imploding pretty quickly. So I think the first thing I need to address is, before I start talking about what I'm dealing with and what I'm going through at the moment, it's why specifically these wheels where you can't just hit it with some sandpaper and call it good. Um, what happened here, what's really happened here, is the aluminum itself is fine for the most part. What's damaged, what you're seeing here that's all eaten up, is the original anodization layer on the on top of the aluminum. So long story short, there is no way to get that off aside from machining the wheel. It's essentially like dead clear coat on paint, right? The only way to get rid of that is to sand it off. But in this case, it needs to be machined off. You need to remove that dead layer to reveal what's left underneath. So if you have wheels that are like a perfect mirror polish, 9 out of 10 times those wheels have already been restored, or that anodization layer has been completely removed, and then the aluminum underneath has been polished. So what do you do in that case? A lot of times places will paint the wheel with a clear coat, literally paint on a clear coat over that polished layer, so that you don't have to keep buffing it and polishing it every couple days, because that's what will happen to aluminum. If there's no protection on there, it'll start to just dull out, and it'll lose that reflection. So my whole thing with just painting on a clear coat is, it's already difficult enough to maintain a car with clear coat where I live anyways. So I can't even imagine trying to maintain clear coat on wheels. There's no way that that's strong enough to hold up to daily use, or even just, the next 20 or 30 years of life. It's not possible. It's not a feasible thing. It doesn't make sense. So that's when you can look into powder coating. And that's what makes the most sense. And I talked a little bit about that in the last video. Again, so here's what needs to happen. And this is, if you don't want to take my word for it, you can take it from the shop who I visited today to give me a quote to have these wheels refinished, to see if they could save them. A gentleman I spoke with has got like 30 years in working with this sort of thing. So he knows what he's talking about. And the consensus is kind of what I've been talking about all along. These wheels are savable, but not as they were from the factory. This finish cannot stay. It just is what it is, because the lip needs to be machined, and after machining that lip, when you clear coat wheels or powder coat them, you can't really bake the wheel twice, right? That's what you would have to do if you were sticking with the two-tone. That's what makes it difficult. The face of the wheel is the matte finish. So in order to get the matte finish, you'd have to spray a matte satin clear around the freshly machined lip of the aluminum. But what that does is that really dulls out the aluminum. So it's not like it'll look bad. It'll almost look more of like a stainless steel kind of finish, almost like how that rotor looks back there, but less shiny. More of that kind of dark hue to it. Oops, let me fix that real quick. So and the entire rim will look like that, and that's for sure not the look that I want to pursue. The only other option is to do a gloss finish. And a gloss finish would make the aluminum look great, but you'd lose the satin factory look on the center of the wheel. It would be a gloss finish on the wheel. And I know a lot of people are probably going to say, well, that's not that big of a deal. Why don't you just do that? Well, it's because it's not the look that I want. I had no intention of ever having my wheels refinished that way. So I don't really want to do that. I would prefer it to look factory, and that's just again, it's a personal preference thing. It's not something I would do. Now, if I don't have a choice, that's probably ultimately the look I'm going to go for, and probably the option I'll take is if things don't pan out. That's probably what I'll do. I'll have the lips machined, and then of course each wheel will get stripped and repainted, and we'll do a gloss powder coat over that. That's just, aside from replacing these rims, that's the only way to do it, because the only real way to fix this, it's kind of a similar situation with the hatch, right? The hatch, I told you guys, you can only really do it by pulling everything off, taking off all the trim, re-gluing it, resealing it, redoing it. So that's one way to do it, but I dare you to find a shop who's going to do that. You're probably going to have to do that yourself. So in that video, I told you here's an alternative that you can do, and that's essentially the situation that we're facing here. The alternative would be to powder coat them, but in this case, the only way to keep them looking factory would be to replace them. And that's, again, it's not coming from me. If you don't want to take my word for it, it's coming from, you know, this guy with 30 years of professional experience. So that leads me to, okay, so, all right, those are your options. Well, what are you doing? So what I ended up doing was actually filing a claim with my insurance, because the wheel damage was so expensive, or potentially expensive, and I didn't know what exactly was going to be ahead of me. Mike recommended that I do that. That's his ballpark and his game, and he said, look, file a claim. It's going to be comprehensive. It should be covered under comprehensive damage, which is basically damage that occurs from stuff that's not a collision, right? So some cases it's hail damage, or if a tree falls on your car, or if your wheels get damaged, right? If you're driving along one day and you bend or crack a rim, that type of thing is typically covered by comprehensive coverage. So where does it make sense to really file a claim and go that route versus just paying out of pocket to have these repaired? Well, to have these powder coated and refinished the way that I just mentioned would be about $980. I have a $1,000 deductible. So for $20 more, if the insurance accepts it, I'd be able to just replace the rims and keep them in the OEM spec, keep them original to the car the way that these wheels are original to the car, which is what I would prefer to do. I'd really, if I'm going to pay $1,000, I would rather utilize the tool that's there for me to use and keep the look that I want versus making a compromise in not only like the look of the car for me, but the value. Because again, you have to look at it from several points. It's not just like, well, just repair the wheels and make it look good. I now have experience of what it's like for one of these cars to get hit. And God forbid if this car ever gets hit and totaled and something like these wheels have been refinished, well, suddenly that's not factory original. And so $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000 of value that would have been added by original factory rims now no longer is in the conversation, because they're no longer factory. They're no longer OEM. It hurts the value of the car. That's really the main reason why I want these to stay original, or at least be original wheels. Because I know that should I have to go that route, that's the game I'm going to have to start playing, and I really don't want to. I want it to be a non-issue. And again, it's like I'm saying, like if I'm paying that amount of money, I don't want to pay for a compromised thing. So we'll see what happens. As of the time of filming this video, I haven't been approved for anything yet. So if the insurance denies allowing me to replace these wheels, then I won't have a choice. I'll have to just, there'll have to be an aftermarket finish, and it sort of is what it is. I really hope that's not the case, but in any case, I figured I'd just kind of shoot this video real fast and give you guys sort of an update on where things are at. The next video I probably will shoot will be at the end of this whole thing, whenever there's a resolution that finally happens. But yeah, that's kind of where things are at, and that's really why I just wanted to go in a little bit more detail about why you can't just sand it off and call it a day. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. There's a couple more steps that have to happen. So yeah. Anyways, guys, it's one of those things where it's like, 5 minutes with a wheel cleaner turns into a minimum of $1,000 of damage that I'm kind of screwed for. So you live and you learn. Be careful with your wheels, and I'll see you in the next one.